Victoria Langford slammed both hands on the hostess podium so hard the reservation book fell to the floor. Every head in the restaurant turned. She was 25 years old, worth $4.7 billion, and a man in a cheap suit had just told her she didn't belong here. She locked eyes with him and said nothing. But what happened next, what a single father and his 8-year-old son did from across that lobby, would bring this woman to her knees before midnight. And not a single person in that room saw it coming. Stay with this story to the very end. Drop a comment right now. Tell me what city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story has traveled. And if you haven't yet hit subscribe and turn on notifications, you don't want to miss what's coming. Victoria Langford didn't flinch. She stood at that podium with her hands still pressed flat against the cold marble surface, staring at the host manager like he was a math problem she was about to solve. "Say that again," she said. The manager, a man named Gerald, mid-50s, thinning hair slicked back with too much product, adjusted his tie and cleared his throat. He didn't look at her. He looked past her. That was the part that burned. "Ma'am, as I said, we are fully reserved for the evening. New Year's Eve is our most exclusive night. Without a reservation, I simply cannot accommodate you." Victoria tilted her head. "I called ahead, 3 days ago. Langford, check again." Gerald made a show of flipping through the reservation book, the same book she'd knocked off the podium seconds ago. He ran his finger down the page slowly. Too slowly. "I'm not seeing it." "Then someone on your staff made a mistake." Gerald smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a man who had already decided who she was the moment she walked through the door. "Perhaps," he said. "But unfortunately, mistakes don't create empty tables." Victoria felt the heat crawl up her neck. She was wearing a simple black coat, no jewelry, no designer bag. She had come straight from her office 18 hours deep into a merger negotiation that would reshape the hospitality industry on the East Coast. She hadn't stopped to change. She hadn't stopped to eat. She had barely stopped to breathe. And now this man, this small, smiling man, was telling her she couldn't sit down. "I'd like to speak with the owner," Victoria said. Gerald's smile widened. "The owner is not available tonight." "Then the general manager." "That would be me." She stared at him. He stared back. And in that silence, something shifted in the room. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet, crawling awareness that everyone nearby was watching. A couple in their 60s walked in behind Victoria. The woman wore a fur coat. The man had a gold watch that caught the chandelier light. Gerald's entire posture changed. His shoulders dropped. His smile turned genuine. "Mr. and Mrs. Ashford, welcome, welcome. Your table is ready. Right this way." He didn't even glance at Victoria as he stepped around her. She stood there, alone. A waiter passed behind her carrying a tray of champagne flutes. He leaned toward a busboy near the corridor and muttered just loud enough for her to hear, "Some people really don't know when they're out of their league." Victoria's jaw tightened. Her fingers curled into fists inside her coat pockets. She had built a $4.7 billion empire by the time she was 25 years old. She had fired executives twice Gerald's age. She had walked into boardrooms full of men who wanted her to fail and walked out owning their companies. But right now, none of that mattered. Because right now, she was just a tired woman in a plain coat, and no one in this building thought she was worth a chair. She turned toward the door. She was going to leave. That was the plan. Walk out. Call her assistant. Buy the building by Tuesday. But she didn't leave. Because a voice stopped her. "Excuse me." Victoria turned. A man stood a few feet away. He was tall, but not imposing. His suit was off the rack, she could tell by the way the shoulders sat. His shoes were clean but worn. He had the kind of face that looked like it had weathered more storms than it would ever talk about. "I saw what happened," he said. Victoria's guard went up instantly. "I'm fine." "I know you are," he said. "But you shouldn't have to be." She blinked. He extended his hand. Daniel Brooks. She didn't take it. I don't need sympathy. Good, Daniel said, because I'm not offering any. He turned and walked toward the hostess podium, where Gerald had just returned, still glowing from escorting the Ashfords to their table. Excuse me, Daniel said. Gerald looked at him with the same measured disinterest. Yes. I have a reservation. Brooks, table for 2. Gerald checked the book. His eyebrows lifted, slightly surprised. Maybe that this man in his modest suit actually had a booking. Ah, yes. Mr. Brooks, table 14. Right this way. Daniel didn't move. I'd like to give my table to her, he said, nodding toward Victoria. Gerald blinked. I'm sorry. The woman you just turned away. Give her my table. Gerald's smile tightened. Sir, that's not how this works. Reservations are non-transferable on... It's my reservation, Daniel said calmly. And I'm telling you, she can have it. Sir, or I can call the owner directly. I did some electrical work in his penthouse last spring. He gave me his personal number, said I could use it any time. Daniel paused. Would you like me to use it now? Gerald's face went pale. Not dramatically, just enough. Just enough for Victoria to notice. That won't be necessary, Gerald said stiffly. I'll arrange something. Daniel turned back to Victoria. There you go. Victoria hadn't moved. She stood with her arms crossed, studying him the way she studied acquisition targets, looking for the angle, the motive, the fine print. Why would you do that? She asked. Because it's the right thing to do. Nobody does things just because they're right. Daniel almost smiled. Then I guess I'm nobody. Before Victoria could respond, a small hand tugged at her coat sleeve. She looked down. A boy, 8 years old maybe, big brown eyes, a gap-toothed smile. He was wearing a clip-on tie that was slightly crooked. Hi, the boy said. I'm Caleb. That's my dad. Victoria looked at him. Something in her chest shifted, not a lot, just a crack. The kind of crack that lets light in whether you want it or not. It's New Year's Eve, Caleb said. Nobody should have to eat alone. Victoria opened her mouth, closed it. She looked at Daniel. He wasn't smiling in triumph. He wasn't waiting for gratitude. He was just standing there, hands in his pockets, like giving away his only dinner reservation. On the most expensive night of the year, was the most natural thing in the world. I can't take your table, Victoria said. You're here with your son. Then sit with us, Daniel said. I don't even know you. You didn't know anyone else in this room either, and they turned you away. That landed. Victoria looked at Caleb again. The boy was rocking on his heels, looking up at her with the kind of unfiltered expectation that only children carry. No agenda, no calculation, just pure, simple hope that she would say yes. Please, Caleb said. Victoria Langford, the woman who had once made a Fortune 500 CEO cry during a negotiation, felt her throat tighten. Okay, she whispered. Gerald led them to table 14 without a word. He pulled out chairs, mechanically placed menus down, and disappeared like a man who wanted to be anywhere else. Victoria sat across from Daniel and Caleb. The table was small. The candle between them flickered. So, Daniel said, opening his menu. What's good here? I wouldn't know, Victoria said. I've never been here before. First time for me too. Caleb picked this place. Caleb nodded proudly. I saw it on TV. They have chocolate cake that's taller than my head. Victoria almost smiled. Almost. What do you do? Daniel asked. Not invasively, just the way people talk. I work in finance, Victoria said. It wasn't a lie, it just wasn't the whole truth. Long hours. You have no idea. Daniel nodded. I pull doubles most weeks, electrical work, commercial buildings mostly. Pays decent, but it eats your time. Is it just the two of you? Daniel's expression shifted. Not sadness exactly. Something deeper. Something that had settled into his bones and become part of who he was. Yeah, he said. Just us. Caleb's mom passed 3 years ago. Breast cancer. She was 31. Victoria set her menu down. I'm sorry, she said. And she meant it. She meant it in a way she hadn't meant anything in a long time. Thank you, Daniel said. Her name was Sarah. She was a teacher, 3rd grade. Every kid in her class called her mom by accident at least once. Caleb grinned. She used to say that was better than any award. Victoria looked at this boy, this small bright boy who had lost his mother and was sitting here in a clip-on tie, excited about chocolate cake pulling strangers into warmth like it was the most natural thing in the world. She raised a good kid, Victoria said quietly. We both did, Daniel said. I just have to do it alone now. The waiter came. Daniel ordered, carefully checking prices without being obvious about it. Victoria noticed. She noticed everything. That was what made her dangerous in boardrooms and lonely everywhere else. Get whatever you want, Victoria said to Caleb. Daniel shook his head. That's kind, but I insist. Consider it a thank you. You don't owe us anything. I know, Victoria said. That's why I want to. Daniel studied her for a moment. Then he nodded. Okay, but just for him. Caleb's eyes went wide. Can I really get the chocolate cake? After dinner, Daniel said. But Dad. After dinner, buddy. Caleb sighed dramatically, and Victoria felt something she hadn't felt in years. She didn't know what to call it. Ease, maybe. A loosening in her chest. A quieting of the noise that had been screaming inside her since she was 19 and started her first company with borrowed money and 3 hours of sleep a night. Can I ask you something? Victoria said. Sure. That thing you did back there, offering your table, you didn't hesitate. No. Why not? Daniel leaned back. Because I've been the person standing at the door, more times than I can count. After Sarah died, people looked at me differently. A single dad with a kid showing up places alone. You can feel it. The way they measure you. Decide if you belong. He paused. It doesn't feel good. No, Victoria said softly. It doesn't. So when I saw them do that to you, I thought I can't fix everything. I can't fix the world. But I can fix this one thing right now tonight. And maybe that's enough. Victoria felt the crack in her chest widen. You know what my board of directors would say about that, she said. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Your board of directors? Victoria caught herself. She had almost said too much. She picked up her water glass and took a sip, buying time. I mean, at my company, the executives, they'd say kindness is inefficient. Daniel laughed, a real laugh, warm and honest. Then they haven't been paying attention. To what? To anything that matters. Caleb tugged Daniel's sleeve. Dad, tell her the rule. Daniel smiled. We have a rule in our house. Just one. Everything else is negotiable, but this one isn't. What is it? Victoria asked. Caleb sat up straight and recited it like a pledge. If you can help, you have to help. No excuses. Victoria stared at him. Sarah came up with it, Daniel said. The week before she passed, she sat Caleb down and told him that rule. She said, the world is going to try to teach you that looking out for yourself is smart. And maybe it is. But looking out for other people, that's brave. And brave is always better than smart. Victoria's hand trembled slightly against her glass. She had spent 6 years building an empire on the principle that smart was everything. That efficiency was survival. That sentiment was weakness. And here was a dead woman's wisdom delivered by an 8-year-old in a crooked tie cutting through every wall Victoria had ever built. She sounds like she was extraordinary, Victoria said. She was ordinary, Daniel said. That was what made her extraordinary. She didn't need to be powerful to be good. She just was. The food arrived. They ate. They talked. Daniel told stories about his work, about the foreman who sang opera on scaffolding, about the time Caleb tried to help rewire a light switch and tripped the power to an entire office building. Caleb told Victoria about his school, his best friend Marco, his dream to be a veterinarian because animals don't care if you're rich or poor, they just want you to be nice. Victoria listened. She really listened. Not the way she listened in meetings, scanning for leverage, filing away weaknesses, calculating her next move. She listened the way she used to listen before the money, before the power, before the loneliness, that she had dressed up as independence for so long, it almost fooled her. "You're different," Daniel said suddenly. Victoria tensed. "What do you mean?" "I mean you're different from what I expected. When I first saw you at the podium, you looked like someone who was going to burn this place down. But sitting here talking like this, you're not that person." "Maybe I am that person," Victoria said. "Maybe I'm just good at pretending." "No," Daniel said. "Caleb doesn't sit this close to people he doesn't trust. Kids know." Victoria looked at Caleb. The boy had shifted his chair closer to hers during dinner without her noticing. He was drawing something on a napkin with a crayon. The waiter had brought a picture of 3 stick figures sitting at a table. "Is that us?" Victoria asked. Caleb nodded. He pointed to each figure. "That's Dad. That's me. And that's you." "Why did you draw me?" Caleb shrugged. "Because you're here." 4 words. Simple. Devastating. Because for Victoria, Langford being here, truly present, truly seen, truly part of something, was the one thing her billions had never been able to buy. Gerald appeared at the table, his demeanor noticeably different now. He had been watching them from across the room for the last hour. Something was wrong. Victoria could feel it. He was nervous. His hands were clasped too tightly. "Is everything satisfactory?" Gerald asked, directing the question entirely at Victoria. "It's fine," she said flatly. "I wanted to apologize for the confusion earlier regarding your reservation. We've had a very hectic evening and—" "You didn't lose my reservation," Victoria said. "You looked at me and decided I wasn't worth the trouble." Gerald's mouth opened, closed. That's not what—" "Don't," Victoria said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of a woman who had ended careers with less effort. "Don't lie to me on top of disrespecting me. Pick one." Gerald swallowed hard. I apologize." "Accepted," Victoria said. "Now leave us alone." Gerald retreated. Daniel watched him go. "You handled that well." "I wanted to handle it differently." "How?" Victoria smiled, small, sharp, dangerous. "You don't want to know." Daniel laughed again. "Fair enough." Caleb looked up from his drawing. "Is the chocolate cake coming?" "After dinner, buddy." "This is after dinner." Daniel paused, looked at Victoria. She raised an eyebrow. "He's got you there," she said. Daniel sighed. "Fine. 1 slice." 2 slices, Caleb negotiated. 1. 1.5. 1 slice, Caleb. 1 slice, and I don't complain about bedtime for a week. Daniel blinked. Victoria pressed her lips together, fighting a laugh. "Deal," Daniel said. Caleb pumped his fist, and Victoria laughed. A real laugh. Full and unguarded and completely foreign to her own ears. Daniel noticed. He didn't say anything, but he noticed. The chocolate cake arrived. It was as promised, absurdly tall. Caleb attacked it with the focus of a surgeon. "Do you have family?" Daniel asked Victoria. The question hit different in the candlelight. "Not really," she said. "My parents and I don't speak. Haven't in years." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was my choice. Or at least that's what I tell myself. What happened? Victoria was quiet for a long moment. The restaurant noise filled the silence, glasses clinking, laughter, the distant sound of a jazz trio warming up for the countdown. I chose work over everything, she said. Over holidays, over birthdays, over phone calls. I told myself I was building something important, and I was. But I built it on top of a lot of empty chairs. Daniel nodded slowly. It's not too late. For what? To fill them. Victoria met his eyes. Something passed between them, not romance, not attraction, but recognition. The recognition of two people who understood loss, who carried weight quietly, who had learned that strength and loneliness often wore the same face. The jazz trio started playing. The lights dimmed. Across the restaurant, voices began counting. 30 minutes to midnight. Victoria looked at Daniel. She looked at Caleb, chocolate smeared across his grin. And she made a decision. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her phone. She had 47 unread messages, 12 missed calls, an email chain that would determine the future of a $600 million acquisition, an acquisition that included among other assets the parent company that owned this very restaurant. She turned the phone off. "Everything okay?" Daniel asked. "For the first time in a long time," Victoria said. "I think it might be." Gerald stood at the far end of the restaurant, whispering frantically into his own phone. His face had gone white. His hands were shaking. He had just learned something. The woman at table 14. The woman he had turned away. The woman he had decided wasn't worth a seat. Her name was Victoria Langford, and she owned everything. Gerald's hand wouldn't stop shaking. He pressed the phone tighter against his ear, as if squeezing it could change what he had just heard. On the other end, the restaurant's owner, Philip Crane, was speaking in a voice Gerald had never heard before. Not anger. Something worse. Fear. "You turned her away," Philip said. I didn't know who she was. She didn't have a reservation. She was wearing a plain coat, no jewelry. Nothing that... Gerald, stop talking." Gerald stopped. "Victoria Langford is sitting in my restaurant right now, at a table you almost didn't give her, and her company is in the final stages of acquiring my entire hospitality group. Do you understand what that means?" Gerald felt his stomach drop to the floor. "Philip, It means that if she walks out of there unhappy, I lose everything. And you lose everything. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Fix it." The line went dead. Gerald lowered the phone slowly. He looked across the restaurant toward table 14. Victoria was leaning slightly forward, listening to the boy Caleb talk with wide animated gestures about something. Daniel was laughing. Victoria wasn't laughing, but she was close. Closer than Gerald had seen her all night. She looked like a different person from the woman who had slammed her hands on his podium 2 hours ago. That terrified him more. Gerald walked to the bar. He grabbed the sommelier by the arm. "Pull the 96 Dom Perignon, 2 bottles. Send them to table 14, complimentary." The sommelier frowned. "The 96, that's... I know what it costs. Do it." Gerald straightened his tie. He checked his reflection in the mirrored wall behind the bar. He practiced his smile. It looked wrong. Too tight. Too desperate. He tried again. Then he walked toward the table. Victoria saw him coming from 20 feet away. She didn't stop talking to Caleb, but her posture changed, a subtle stiffening, the kind of shift only someone trained in reading people would notice. Daniel noticed too. He glanced over his shoulder and saw Gerald approaching with the strained expression of a man walking toward his own execution. "Here we go," Daniel murmured. Victoria's eyes flicked to him. "You see it too." Hard to miss. Gerald arrived at the table with a flourish that fooled no one. "I hope you're all enjoying your evening. I wanted to personally ensure that everything has been to your satisfaction." "You already asked us that," Victoria said. "Yes, well, I wanted to let you know that we've arranged a complimentary champagne for your table. Our finest vintage. And if there's anything else, anything at all, I would be honored to—" "Sit down, Gerald." Gerald blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Sit down." Gerald looked around. There was no empty chair. A busboy materialized, instantly sliding one over. Gerald sat stiff as a board. Victoria studied him. She didn't speak for a long moment. The silence did its work. "You know who I am now," she said. It wasn't a question. Gerald swallowed. "Ms. Langford, I want to sincerely apologize for—" "I didn't ask for an apology. I asked a question." "Yes," Gerald said. "I know who you are." "And 2 hours ago—" Gerald hesitated. "2 hours ago, I made a terrible mistake." "No," Victoria said. "2 hours ago, you made a decision. You looked at me and decided what I was worth. That's not a mistake, Gerald. That's a habit." Gerald opened his mouth. Nothing came out. "How many people have you turned away from that podium?" Victoria asked. "Not people without reservations. People you decided didn't look right, didn't dress right, didn't fit." Gerald's face was gray. "Ms. Langford, I assure you, our policy is—" "I'm not asking about your policy. I'm asking about you." Caleb had stopped drawing. He was watching Gerald with the quiet attention of a child who understood more than adults gave him credit for. Daniel sat still, saying nothing, but his eyes moved between Victoria and Gerald, like a man watching something important unfold. "How long have you worked here?" Victoria asked. 12 years. 12 years. And in those 12 years, how many times have you made someone feel the way you made me feel tonight?" Gerald looked at the tablecloth. Don't say you don't know. You know. You remember their faces even if you won't admit it." Gerald's jaw tightened. For a moment something cracked behind the professional mask. Not remorse exactly, but the exhausting weight of maintaining a lie. "More than I should have," he said quietly. Victoria leaned back. That answer surprised her. She had expected denial. She had expected more groveling, more excuses, more of the performance she had watched executives give her 100 times when they got caught being exactly who they were. But Gerald had answered honestly, and honesty was the one currency Victoria still respected. "Why?" she asked. Gerald looked up. "Why what? Why did you do it? Turn people away, judge them." Gerald glanced at Daniel, then at Caleb, then back at Victoria. He rubbed his hands together slowly. "Because this restaurant made me feel important," he said. "For 12 years I stood at that podium and decided who got in and who didn't. And somewhere along the way, I confused controlling the door with being worth something." The table went quiet. Daniel shifted in his seat. Victoria could feel him wanting to speak, holding back out of respect for the moment. "That's the most honest thing anyone has said to me in years," Victoria said. Gerald looked at her like he didn't believe her. "I mean it," she said. "Do you know how many people sit across from me in conference rooms and lie to my face every single day? They lie about numbers, about projections, about why they deserve my money. They lie with perfect smiles and expensive suits. And I let them because that's the game." She paused. "But you just told me the truth. And it cost you something to say it." Gerald's eyes were wet. He blinked rapidly. "Are you going to fire me?" Victoria tilted her head. "I don't own this restaurant yet." The word "yet" hung in the air like a blade. "But when you do?" Gerald asked. Victoria didn't answer. She turned to Daniel. "What do you think?" Daniel raised his eyebrows. "You're asking me? You're the one who gave up his table. You started this. What do you think should happen?" Daniel looked at Gerald, really looked at him. Not with judgment, not with anger, but with the steady gaze of a man who had learned to see people clearly because life had forced him to. "I think," Daniel said slowly, "that everybody deserves a chance to be better than their worst moment." Gerald stared at him. "But I also think," Daniel continued, "that a chance doesn't mean nothing changes. A chance means you change." Victoria nodded. She turned back to Gerald. You heard him. Gerald let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for 12 years. Thank you. Don't thank me, Victoria said. Thank him. And his son. They're the reason you're still sitting here instead of clearing out your locker. Gerald looked at Caleb. The boy gave him a small wave. I like your tie, Caleb said, pointing to Gerald's burgundy silk necktie. Gerald let out a choked laugh. Thank you, young man. Mine's a clip-on, Caleb said matter-of-factly. But one day I'll have a real one. I'm sure you will, Gerald said. Victoria watched the exchange. Something moved behind her eyes, something old, something she had buried so deep she had forgotten it was there. The memory of being young and small and believing that one day things would be different. One day she would matter. Gerald, she said. Yes? Go back to your podium. And the next person who walks through that door tonight, whoever they are, whatever they're wearing, you give them the best table you have. Can you do that? Gerald stood. He straightened his jacket. Yes, ma'am. He walked away. His steps were different now, slower, heavier, like a man carrying something real for the first time. Daniel watched him go, then turned to Victoria. That was something. What? The way you handled that. You could have destroyed him. I know. But you didn't. Victoria picked up her water glass. Maybe I'm trying something new. Is that so? Don't get used to it. Daniel smiled. It was a warm smile, unhurried, the kind that came from a man who didn't use smiles as tools. Victoria found herself looking away, uncomfortable with how much that smile affected her. Caleb, Daniel said. Why don't you tell Victoria about your science project? Caleb's face lit up. Oh man, okay, so we had to build a volcano, right? And everybody used baking soda and vinegar, boring, normal, whatever. But I wanted mine to be real, so I found this video online about Mentos and Diet Coke. Oh no, Victoria said. Oh yes, Daniel said. And I did it in the kitchen, Caleb continued, and it went everywhere. Like the ceiling, Victoria. He's not exaggerating, Daniel said. We're still finding sticky spots. My teacher said it was the most memorable volcano she'd ever seen, Caleb said proudly. Was that a compliment? Victoria asked. I choose to believe it was. Victoria laughed again, that full, unguarded laugh that felt like a stranger inside her body. Caleb grinned at her chocolate still smeared on his chin, and Victoria felt something crack open wider, not painfully, but the way a window cracks open in a room that has been sealed too long. You laugh different than you talk, Daniel said. Victoria looked at him. What does that mean? When you talk, especially to Gerald, you sound like someone who runs the world. But when you laugh, you sound like someone who forgot they were allowed to. Victoria felt the words land somewhere deep. She didn't respond right away. She turned her water glass slowly on the table, watching the candlelight refract through it. My assistant once told me I hadn't laughed in a meeting in 3 years, she said. I fired her the next day. Daniel frowned. For telling you the truth. For making me hear it. That's a lonely way to live. It's an efficient way to live. Those aren't the same thing. Victoria met his eyes. I know. The jazz trio started playing something slower, something that moved through the room like smoke. Couples shifted closer together. The countdown was 15 minutes away now. Waiters circulated with champagne trays. The 2 bottles Gerald had sent sat unopened on the table. Are we going to drink those? Caleb asked, eyeing the Dom Perignon. You're having apple juice, buddy, Daniel said. Can I at least hold one? No. What if I hold it very carefully? No. Caleb sighed and returned to his napkin drawing. Victoria picked up one of the bottles. She turned it in her hands. This bottle costs about $800, she said. Daniel's eyes widened. For champagne? For this champagne, yes. That's my electricity bill for 3 months. Victoria set the bottle down. She looked at it like it was something she was seeing clearly for the first time. "You know what I realized tonight?" she said. "What?" "I've spent 6 years surrounded by $800 bottles of champagne, at galas, at board dinners, at celebrations for deals I closed. And not once, not a single time did anyone at those tables offer me a seat because they thought I needed one. They offered me seats because they wanted something from me." She looked at Daniel. "You offered me a seat because you thought I was someone with nowhere to sit. That's the difference. That's the whole difference." Daniel held her gaze. "Sarah would have done the same thing." "Tell me more about her," Victoria said. Daniel sat back. He rubbed the back of his neck the way he always did when he talked about Sarah, like he was loosening the grip of grief just enough to let the words out. "She was stubborn," he said. "God, she was stubborn. We'd argue about the dumbest things, whether to paint the kitchen yellow or green, whether Caleb should play soccer or baseball. She'd dig in on the smallest stuff just to drive me crazy. Who won? She did. Every time. Not because I let her, because she was usually right. She had this way of seeing things I missed. I'd be focused on the problem, and she'd already be 3 steps past it, looking at the solution." "Sounds familiar," Victoria said. Daniel smiled sadly. "When she got sick, I thought, okay, we'll fight this the way we fight everything. Together, head on. She was the strongest person I knew. I never doubted for a second that she'd beat it." His voice dropped. "She didn't beat it." Victoria didn't say anything. She didn't offer comfort. She didn't try to fill the silence with empty words. She just sat with it, present, steady. "The last thing she said to me," Daniel continued, was, "Don't let him forget how to be kind. Not take care of him. Not make sure he's safe." She said kind. Because she knew that the world would test him, and she wanted his default setting to be kindness. "Is it?" Victoria asked. Daniel looked at Caleb, who was carefully adding details to his napkin, drawing a sun, some stars, a crooked Christmas tree. "Every single day," Daniel said. Victoria folded her hands on the table. Her fingers were still, controlled, but her voice was not. "I don't have anyone who would say that about me," she said. "If I died tomorrow, no one would say she was kind. They'd say she was brilliant. They'd say she was ruthless. They'd say she changed the industry. But kind, no one would say that. It's not too late to change what they'd say." "You keep saying that." "Because you keep needing to hear it." The room was getting louder. The countdown energy was building. People were standing, moving toward the windows, where they could see the sky phones out, ready to capture the moment midnight arrived. Caleb looked up. "Dad, how many minutes?" Daniel checked his watch. "About 10. "Can I go look at the fireworks spot by the window?" Daniel hesitated. The window area was crowded full of strangers with champagne glasses. "I'll keep him close," a voice said. They turned. A waitress, young, maybe 22, with a kind face and a name tag that read Maria, stood nearby. She had been watching their table all evening, quietly refilling water glasses and clearing plates without interrupting. "I've got a nephew about his age," Maria said. "I'll stay with him." Daniel looked at Caleb, then at Maria. "You sure?" "Of course." Caleb jumped up. "Come on, Maria, I want the best spot." They wove through the crowd toward the windows. Daniel watched until he could see Caleb's head bobbing near the glass, Maria's hand on his shoulder. He turned back to Victoria. They were alone now. The candle between them was burning low. "Can I be honest with you?" Daniel said. "I'd prefer it. I don't know what you do in finance. I don't know if you're an analyst or a manager or whatever, but I can tell you carry something heavy. I've carried heavy things. I know what it looks like." Victoria was still. "And I think," Daniel said, "that whatever happened at that podium tonight, being turned away like that, I think it hit harder than you're letting on. Not because of the restaurant, but because it reminded you of something." Victoria's breath caught. She pressed her lips together hard, like she was physically preventing words from escaping. "You don't have to tell me," Daniel said, "but I wanted you to know that I see it." Victoria stared at the candle flame. For several seconds, the noise of the restaurant seemed to fade. It was just her and the fire and the weight of 25 years of running. "When I was 17, she said, I went to a career fair at my high school. I told one of the recruiters I wanted to run a company. He looked at me, this 17-year-old girl in second-hand clothes, and he laughed. He actually laughed. And he said, 'Sweetie, maybe start with something more realistic.'" She paused. "I built my first company 2 years later, out of spite. I built it because that man laughed at me, and I wanted to prove him wrong. And I did. I proved him wrong 100 times over. But here's the thing about building something out of spite, Daniel." "What?" "It works, but it doesn't fill you up. You get the money. You get the power. You get the corner office with the view of the city. And then one night, you walk into a restaurant alone, and some man looks at you the way that recruiter looked at you, and suddenly you're 17 again, and none of it, not a single dollar, not a single deal makes you feel like you belong." Daniel reached across the table. He didn't grab her hand. He just placed his palm flat on the table, open near hers. An offering, not a demand. "You belong here," he said. Victoria looked at his hand, then at his face. "You don't even know who I am," she said. "I know enough. You know nothing about me. I know you laughed at my son's volcano story. I know you let an 8-year-old pull you into a conversation when every instinct told you to walk away. I know you sat down with strangers on New Year's Eve when you could have gone anywhere in the world." He paused. "And I know you haven't looked at your phone once since you sat down. For someone in finance, that's a miracle." Victoria almost smiled. "It's off." "I know, I noticed." Across the restaurant, the crowd began to shift. The jazz trio stopped playing. A voice came through the speaker system. "Ladies and gentlemen, 5 minutes to midnight." A cheer went up. Glasses clinked. The energy in the room changed, electric, expectant, alive. Victoria looked toward the windows. She could see Caleb pressed against the glass, Maria standing behind him, both looking up at the sky. "Daniel," she said. "Yeah. There's something I need to tell you, and I should have told you earlier." Daniel's expression shifted. "Okay." Victoria opened her mouth. The words were right there on her tongue, ready to fall. "My name is Victoria Langford. I'm worth $4.7 billion. The company I run is about to acquire the group that owns this restaurant. Everything about tonight is more complicated than you think." But she couldn't say it, because the moment she said it, this would end. This small, warm, impossible thing. This table, this candle, this man who offered his seat to a stranger, it would end. He would look at her differently. He would pull back. He would become careful, guarded the way everyone became when they learned what she was worth. And she wasn't ready for that. Not yet. Not with 3 minutes until midnight. "What is it?" Daniel asked. Victoria closed her eyes, opened them. "Thank you," she said. "That's what I needed to tell you. Thank you for tonight. For the table. For your son. For not asking me to be anything other than what I am right now." Daniel studied her. He knew she had been about to say something else. She could see it in his eyes, the awareness, the patience, the choice to let her have her secret a little while longer. "You're welcome," he said. 2 minutes, someone shouted. Caleb came running back, breathless and grinning. Dad, you can see everything from over there. The whole sky is ready." Daniel laughed and pulled Caleb onto his lap. The boy squirmed with excitement. "Victoria, are you going to count down with us?" Caleb asked. Victoria looked at this boy, this father, this table that she almost never sat at. "Yes," she said. "I am." The room began to count. 60 seconds, 50, 40. Victoria could hear Gerald's voice somewhere in the chorus, could feel the vibration of hundreds of people reaching toward the same moment together. 30 seconds, 20. Daniel looked at Victoria across the table. He raised his water glass. She raised hers. 10, 9, 8. Caleb was bouncing on Daniel's lap, counting at the top of his lungs. 7, 6, 5. Victoria felt something building in her chest. Not anxiety, not calculation, not the relentless forward drive that had consumed her for 6 years. Something older. Something she had abandoned long ago. 4, 3, 2, 1. The room erupted. Fireworks exploded in the sky outside the windows, painting the glass in gold and silver. Champagne corks popped. Strangers hugged. The jazz trio launched into Auld Lang Syne, and the whole restaurant sang along off-key and beautiful. Caleb threw his arms up and shouted, "Happy New Year!" so loudly that 3 tables turned and cheered for him. Daniel clinked his glass against Victoria's. "Happy New Year." Victoria clinked back. "Happy New Year, Daniel." And then Caleb leaned across the table and clinked his apple juice against both of their glasses, sloshing a little on the tablecloth. "Happy New Year, Victoria," he said. "I'm glad you stayed." Victoria pressed her glass to her lips. The water tasted different somehow. Cleaner. Lighter. "Me too, Caleb," she said. "Me too." Around them the celebration continued. The fireworks thundered outside. Gerald stood at his podium watching table 14 with an expression caught between terror and something that might have been admiration. Maria the waitress clapped along with the music. The Ashfords in their fur and gold clinked glasses without once looking toward the table where the most powerful person in the room sat drinking water with a single dad and his 8-year-old son. Victoria's phone was still off in her pocket. 47 messages, 12 missed calls. A $600 million deal hanging in the balance. None of it mattered right now. But it would matter tomorrow. And tomorrow was already here. Victoria didn't sleep that night. She sat in the back of her car at 2:15 in the morning while her driver waited for instructions. The streets of Manhattan were still loud fireworks, echoing off buildings, drunk laughter, bouncing through crosswalks. The last gasps of celebration, refusing to die. She had said goodbye to Daniel and Caleb outside the restaurant. Caleb had hugged her. Not a polite hug, a real one. The kind where a child wraps both arms around your waist and squeezes like they're trying to hold you in place. Victoria had stood there stiff at first, then slowly brought her hand to the back of his head. "Happy New Year, Victoria," Caleb had whispered. Daniel had shaken her hand. It was a good night. "It was," she had said. They had exchanged numbers. Daniel had typed his into her phone, carefully, double-checking the digits like a man who didn't give his number out often. Victoria had typed hers with the speed of someone who did everything fast and felt everything later. Now she sat in the dark leather interior of her town car staring at her phone. She had turned it back on. The screen had exploded messages stacking on top of messages, emails cascading like an avalanche. Her CFO had called 9 times. Her general counsel had sent a message marked urgent at 11:47 p.m. Her assistant Rebecca, the new one, the one who had replaced the one Victoria fired for telling the truth, had texted 17 times. Victoria scrolled past all of it. She opened Daniel's contact, stared at it. His name sat there in her phone between Daniel's Mark Deutsche Bank and Davidson Rachel board member. A single dad from Brooklyn wedged between the pillars of her empire. She closed the phone. "Ms. Langford," her driver said. "Where to?" "Office." "It's 2 in the morning. I know what time it is." The car pulled away. Victoria pressed her forehead against the cold window and watched Manhattan blur past. Somewhere in this city, Daniel was carrying a sleeping Caleb up 3 flights of stairs to an apartment that probably cost less than Victoria's monthly dry cleaning bill. Somewhere in this city, Gerald was lying awake, wondering if his career was over. Somewhere in this city, Philip Crane was pacing his penthouse, calculating how much damage control he needed to do before Victoria Langford decided to burn his empire to the ground. Everyone was afraid of her tonight. Everyone except a man who gave away his table and a boy who shared his chocolate cake. Victoria arrived at Langford Capital's headquarters at 2:38 a.m. The building was empty except for security. She rode the elevator to the 42nd floor alone. Her office was enormous floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a desk that cost more than Daniel's annual salary, walls lined with awards and magazine covers, and framed handshake photos with senators and tech moguls. She sat down. She opened her laptop. The acquisition file was already on screen, the Crane Hospitality Group deal. $612 million, 14 restaurants across the eastern seaboard, 3 boutique hotels, a catering empire, all of it about to become hers. She stared at the numbers. They hadn't changed. The deal was clean. The margins were strong. Her team had spent 8 months on due diligence. Everything was ready for her signature. Victoria pulled up a chair and started reading from the beginning. Not the financials. The personnel files. Employee rosters. Management structures. She scrolled through names and titles and salary figures until she found it. Gerald Whitmore. General Manager. La Maison d'Or. Employed 12 years. Performance ratings. Excellent. Customer satisfaction scores. Above average. Staff turnover under his management. Low. On paper, Gerald was a model employee. Victoria closed the file. She picked up her phone and called Rebecca. It rang 5 times. Rebecca answered groggy and panicked. "Ms. Langford, is everything okay? I saw you didn't respond to. I need you in the office at 7. 7. It's New Year's Day. I know what day it is, Rebecca. Yes, ma'am. 7. I'll be there. And call Marcus. Tell him I want a full review of the Crane acquisition. Every property, every manager, every complaint filed in the last 5 years." Rebecca paused. "A full review. We already completed due diligence. The board approved. I'm not asking the board, I'm asking you." "Yes, ma'am." "One more thing." "Yes. Find me everything you can on an employee named Maria, waitress at La Maison d'Or. Young. Maybe 22. I don't have a last name." "What am I looking for?" "I'll know when you find it." Victoria hung up. She leaned back in her chair and stared at the ceiling. The fluorescent lights hummed above her like a mechanical heartbeat. She thought about Caleb's drawing. 3 stick figures at a table, a sun, some stars, a crooked Christmas tree that didn't make sense for New Year's Eve, but made perfect sense for a child who drew the world the way he wanted it to be, not the way it was. Victoria opened her desk drawer and pulled out a blank legal pad. She uncapped a pen. At the top of the page, she wrote 2 words, "What matters?" Then she sat there for a long time staring at the blank space beneath it. At 7 a.m., sharp Rebecca walked in carrying 2 coffees and a folder 3 inches thick. She was 29, sharp, ambitious, and terrified of Victoria, in the way that all of Victoria's employees were terrified, not because Victoria was cruel, but because Victoria saw everything, and being seen that clearly was its own kind of threat. "Happy New Year," Rebecca said cautiously. Victoria took the coffee without acknowledging the greeting. "What do you have?" Rebecca opened the folder. "I pulled everything I could on short notice. The Crane Group has had 14 formal complaints filed against management across their properties in the last 3 years. 7 of those are from La Maison d'Or." "What kind of complaints?" "Discrimination mostly. Guests claiming they were turned away or treated differently based on appearance. 2 complaints specifically mention the general manager by name. Gerald Whitmore. Yes, both complaints describe the same pattern. Guests without reservations being denied service while walk-ins who appeared wealthier were accommodated. 1 complaint was filed by a couple. The husband was black, the wife was white. They had a reservation, but were told there was a mix-up with their table. Meanwhile, they watched 2 white couples without reservations get seated immediately. Victoria's jaw tightened. What happened with the complaint? Crane's HR department investigated and cleared Gerald. The couple didn't pursue it further. Of course they didn't. Who wants to fight a corporation over a dinner table? Rebecca hesitated. There's more. 3 of the complaints mention a pattern of younger female staff being pressured to accommodate VIP guests in ways that go beyond normal service. Nothing explicit, but the language suggests a culture of, I don't know how to describe it exactly. A culture of looking the other way. Yes. Victoria stood. She walked to the window. The city was quiet for once. New Year's morning, most of Manhattan still sleeping off champagne and regret. What about Maria? Victoria asked. Rebecca flipped pages. Maria Gonzalez, 23. Waitress at La Maison d'Or for 2 years, originally from the Bronx. She's putting herself through community college, hospitality management major. Her employee reviews are outstanding. Multiple customers have mentioned her by name in positive feedback. Anything negative? 1 incident. 6 months ago, she filed an internal complaint against Gerald. She said he reprimanded her for spending too much time with a family that he described as, and I'm quoting from the report, not the caliber of guest we cater to. The family had 2 young children. Maria had been helping them with the menu. Victoria turned from the window. What happened to her complaint? Dismissed. Gerald denied it. HR sided with management. Victoria picked up her coffee, took a slow sip, set it down. Rebecca. Yes? Cancel my meetings for today. All of them. All of them. You have a call with the Tokyo office at. Cancel it. And the board review at. Cancel it. Rebecca wrote quickly. Anything else? Yes, get me Marcus on the phone, and then get me Philip Crane. Rebecca looked up. You want to call Philip Crane on New Year's Day? He's awake, trust me. Rebecca left. Victoria sat back down at her desk. She picked up the legal pad. Beneath, what matters, she wrote 3 words, people over paper. Then she picked up her phone and did something she hadn't done in 6 years. She texted Daniel. Good morning, I hope Caleb isn't too tired from last night. I wanted to say again, thank you, for everything. She stared at the message for 30 seconds before hitting send. It felt foreign, personal, dangerous. 3 minutes later, Daniel replied. He's still asleep, hasn't let go of his napkin drawing. You're in it, so I think you made an impression. Happy New Year, Victoria. Victoria pressed her phone against her chest. She didn't know why. It was instinct, the kind of gesture she would have mocked in anyone else. Sentimental, inefficient, human. Her office phone rang. Marcus Devereaux, her general counsel, was on the line. Victoria, it's a holiday. I'm aware. What's going on? Rebecca said you want a full review of the Crane deal. We closed due diligence 2 months ago. The board signed off. We're scheduled to finalize next week. I'm pushing the timeline. Silence. You're pushing a $600 million acquisition, Marcus repeated slowly. I want to meet with every property manager in the Crane Group. Personally. That's Victoria, that's 14 properties. That's weeks of scheduling. Then start scheduling. Can I ask why? Victoria paused. She could hear Marcus breathing on the other end, probably sitting in his home office in Connecticut, still in his pajamas, trying to figure out if his boss had lost her mind. Because I signed off on a deal based on numbers, Victoria said. And I just found out the numbers don't tell the whole story. What story? The story of how these places actually treat people. Not on spreadsheets, Marcus, in person, at the door. Another silence. Longer this time. Is this about what happened last night? Marcus asked carefully. Victoria's grip on the phone tightened. What do you know about last night? Philip Crane called me at 1 a.m. in a panic. Said you showed up at La Maison d'Or, were turned away by his GM, and ended up sitting with some random family. He's terrified you're going to kill the deal. Good. Good that he's terrified. Good that he should be. Marcus exhaled. Victoria, I need to be honest with you. If you delay this acquisition over a personal experience at one restaurant, the board is going to have questions. Harrison will push back. Chen will call an emergency meeting. This deal has momentum, and, Marcus, yes, I don't care about momentum. I care about what we're buying. And if what we're buying is a chain of beautiful restaurants that turn people away because they don't look rich enough, then I need to know that before I put my name on it. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Okay, I'll start the review. Thank you. But Victoria, what? Harrison is going to come for you on this. You know that. Let him. She hung up. Marcus was right. Thomas Harrison, the longest-serving member of her board of directors, 63 years old money, old school, would see this as weakness, as emotion clouding judgment, as the exact thing he had warned about when he voted against appointing a 23-year-old as CEO 3 years ago. Harrison had said in a meeting he thought was private but that Victoria had recorded, "She's brilliant but she's young, and young people make decisions with their hearts. That's a liability." Victoria had kept that recording, not as leverage, as fuel. Her phone buzzed. Another text from Daniel. "Caleb just woke up and asked if you're coming to breakfast. I told him that's not how it works. He said why not?" Victoria stared at the screen. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. Then she typed, "Tell Caleb I wish I could." Daniel replied, "He says he's making pancakes and he'll save you one. Fair warning, his pancakes are basically flat cookies." Victoria smiled. Alone in her 42nd floor office, surrounded by glass and steel and power, she smiled at a text about flat cookies. Rebecca knocked. "Philip Crane is on line 2. Victoria straightened. The smile disappeared. In its place was something harder, sharper, the face that had graced the cover of Forbes twice before she turned 25. She picked up the phone. "Philip." "Victoria." Philip's voice was too loud, too bright, the voice of a man performing calm while his insides burned. "Happy New Year. I hope you had a wonderful evening. I heard you visited La Maison d'Or, and I want to personally apologize for any—" "Stop." Philip stopped. "I'm going to ask you questions," Victoria said, "and you're going to answer them honestly. If you lie to me, I will know, and this conversation will be the last one we ever have. Do you understand?" Victoria, "Do you understand?" "Yes." "How many complaints has your company received about discriminatory treatment at your restaurants in the last 5 years? Philip hesitated. "I'd have to check with—" 14. The answer is 14. I've already pulled the records. I'm asking if you knew. Another hesitation. Longer. "I was aware of some concerns." "Some concerns. A couple was denied their reserved table because of the color of their skin, and you're calling that some concerns. That allegation was investigated and dismissed by your HR department, which reports to your operations director, who reports to you. That's not an investigation, Philip. That's a cover-up." Philip's voice dropped the performance. "What do you want, Victoria?" "I want the truth. Did you know Gerald Whitmore was turning away guests based on how they looked?" Silence. Philip. "I knew he was selective." Selective. It's fine dining, Victoria. There's an expectation of— An expectation of what? That everyone who walks through the door has to pass a wealth inspection. That a woman in a plain coat gets sent away while someone in fur gets the red carpet. That's not— That is exactly what happened to me last night. That is exactly what has been happening in your restaurants for years. And you knew. Philip's breathing was audible. Are you killing the deal? I haven't decided. Victoria, please. This acquisition, it's everything for me. My company, my employees, hundreds of jobs. Your employees filed complaints that you ignored. Don't use them as a shield now. Philip went quiet. Here's what's going to happen, Victoria said. I'm conducting a full review of every property in your group. Every manager, every complaint, every policy. And I'm going to meet with your staff. Not your executives, not your PR team, your staff. The waiters, the hostesses, the dishwashers. The people who actually know what happens in your restaurants. That could take weeks. Then it takes weeks. The deal was supposed to close next Friday. The deal closes when I say it closes. Philip said nothing. And Philip, one more thing. Yes. The waitress at La Maison d'Or, Maria Gonzalez. She filed a complaint 6 months ago that was dismissed. I want that complaint reopened and reviewed by an independent party. Not your HR, not your lawyers, someone I choose. Victoria, I can't just... You can, and you will. Or this call really will be our last one. Victoria hung up. She set the phone down carefully, precisely the way she did everything. Then she pressed both palms flat against her desk and closed her eyes. She thought about Gerald telling her that controlling the door made him feel important. She thought about Philip saying selective, like it was a business strategy instead of a betrayal. She thought about Maria, 23 years old, working her way through college, filing a complaint, because she believed the system would protect her and the system doing nothing. And she thought about Daniel, standing in that lobby with his off-the-rack suit and his worn shoes, saying to Gerald, "She can have my table." No calculation, no agenda, no fine print. Just a man who believed that if you could help, you had to help. Victoria opened her eyes. She picked up the legal pad. Beneath "People over paper," she wrote, "What would Daniel do?" She stared at it. Then she crossed it out and wrote something else. What would Sarah do? She had never met Sarah Brooks. She knew Sarah only through Daniel's stories and Caleb's grin, and a family rule scrawled on the walls of a Brooklyn apartment she had never seen. But Sarah's ghost had been at that table last night, sitting in the empty chair, reminding everyone that kindness wasn't weakness and decency wasn't a luxury. Victoria tore the page from the legal pad. She folded it once and put it in her pocket. Her phone buzzed one more time. A photo from Daniel. Caleb standing in their small kitchen, flour on his face, holding up a misshapen pancake with a huge grin. Beneath it, Daniel had written, "He says this one's yours. He's holding it hostage until you come get it." Victoria laughed. That strange, unfamiliar laugh that kept escaping from a place she thought she had sealed shut. Then she put the phone down and got to work. Because the world she had built ran on numbers and leverage and calculated precision. But the world she had glimpsed last night at table 14, between a candle and a napkin drawing, ran on something else entirely. And for the first time in her life, Victoria Langford wasn't sure which world she wanted to live in. But she knew she couldn't live in both. The choice was coming. And it would cost her more than money. Rebecca knocked again. "Ms. Langford, Thomas Harrison is on line 1. He says it's urgent." Victoria looked at the phone. She could hear it ringing, insistent, demanding the sound of a man who believed urgency was the same as importance. She picked up the receiver. "Thomas, Happy New Year." "Cut the pleasantries, Victoria. I just got off the phone with Marcus." "What the hell are you doing to the Crane deal?" "I'm reviewing it." "We already reviewed it. 8 months of review. The board approved it unanimously." "The board approved the numbers. I'm reviewing the people." "The people, Victoria. This is a $600 million acquisition, not a sociology experiment. What happened? I went to one of Crane's restaurants last night. And they turned me away because I didn't look wealthy enough." Harrison paused. When he spoke again, his voice had the patronizing edge that Victoria had learned to recognize and despise years ago. "Victoria, you're telling me you want to delay a $600 million deal because a hostess hurt your feelings?" Victoria's hand tightened on the receiver. "No, Thomas. I'm telling you I want to delay a $600 million deal because the company we're buying has a documented pattern of discriminating against its customers, and I don't want our name on that. Every restaurant in Manhattan has a door policy. That's not discrimination, that's branding. Turning away a black couple with a reservation isn't branding. It's a lawsuit waiting to happen. And when it happens, it'll be our lawsuit, because we'll own the company." Harrison went quiet. Victoria could practically hear him recalculating. "I'm flying to New York tomorrow," Harrison said. "We need to discuss this face to face." "Fine. And Victoria, don't make any decisions before I get there." I'll make whatever decisions I need to make, Thomas. That's my job." She hung up before he could respond. Rebecca was still standing in the doorway. "Anything else, Ms. Langford?" Victoria picked up her coffee. It was cold. She drank it anyway. "Yes," she said. "Find me an address." "For Daniel Brooks, Brooklyn. He's an electrician. He has a son named Caleb." Rebecca's expression shifted, not confusion exactly, but curiosity. In 2 years of working for Victoria Langford, Rebecca had never once been asked to find a personal address. Client addresses, yes. Competitor addresses, yes. But never someone who was just a person. "May I ask what this is regarding?" Rebecca said. Victoria looked at her. "He saved me a pancake." Rebecca blinked. "I'll find it." Victoria turned back to the window. The sun was fully up now, casting long shadows across the empty New Year's streets. Somewhere in Brooklyn, a boy was holding a misshapen pancake hostage, waiting for a woman he had met for 3 hours to come claim it. And somewhere on the 42nd floor of a glass tower in Manhattan, that woman was realizing that the pancake might be worth more than everything she could see from this window. Rebecca found the address in under an hour. Victoria sat in her office staring at it on her screen, a walk-up apartment building in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. 3rd floor, Unit 3B. She pulled up the street view. The building was old. Clean, but old. The kind of place where people hung laundry on fire escapes and kids rode bikes on the sidewalk, and nobody locked their doors because there was nothing inside worth stealing except the people themselves. Victoria closed the screen. She picked up her phone and called Daniel. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Hey. Hey. Is Caleb still holding my pancake hostage?" Daniel laughed. "He wrapped it in tinfoil and put it in the fridge. He wrote your name on it in marker. Spelled Victoria wrong, but the spirit is there." "How did he spell it?" "Viktorea." Victoria pressed her hand over her mouth to keep from laughing too loudly. "Close enough." "So what's up?" Victoria hesitated. She had rehearsed this in her head 3 times already, and each time it came out wrong. Too formal, too stiff, too much like a CEO issuing a directive and not enough like a person asking a simple question. "I was wondering," she said, "if I could come by. To pick up that pancake." Daniel was quiet for a beat. "You want to come here?" "If that's okay." Another beat. "Victoria, I should tell you this isn't exactly a penthouse." "I didn't ask for a penthouse." "I know. I want you to know what you're walking into. A 3rd floor walk-up in Bay Ridge, Unit 3B. I already looked it up." Daniel laughed again, but this time it had an edge. "Of course you did." "I'm sorry. Old habit. I research everything. Everything. Everything and everyone. So you know what I make." Victoria closed her eyes. "Daniel, I didn't." "It's fine. I'm not embarrassed. I just want to be honest. You're going to walk into a 2-bedroom apartment with second-hand furniture and a refrigerator that makes a sound like a dying cat every 45 minutes. Caleb's room has a poster of a dog on the wall because we can't afford an actual dog. And the pancake he saved you is probably the worst pancake ever made. I just need you to know all of that before you come." Victoria felt something tighten in her throat. Not pity. She refused to let it be pity. It was something else, respect maybe. The respect you feel for someone who doesn't hide who they are. "I'll be there in an hour," she said. "I'll tell Caleb. He's going to lose his mind." Victoria hung up. She stood, grabbed her coat, and walked toward the elevator. Rebecca intercepted her in the hallway. "Ms. Langford, Thomas Harrison's flight lands at 3. He's expecting to meet you at... Tell him I'll be back by 4. "Where should I say you are?" Victoria pressed the elevator button. "Brooklyn." "Brooklyn for what?" "Pancakes." The elevator doors closed on Rebecca's bewildered face. Victoria's driver pulled up to Daniel's building 47 minutes later. She told him to wait. She stood on the sidewalk and looked up at the building. 3 floors, brick. A fire escape on the left side with a small plant on the 2nd floor landing that someone was trying very hard to keep alive. She climbed the stairs. By the third floor, she was slightly out of breath, not from exertion, but from something else. Nervousness. Victoria Langford, who had stood before congressional committees and hostile boards without blinking, was nervous about knocking on a door in Brooklyn. She knocked. Footsteps. Fast ones. Small ones. The door flew open, and Caleb stood there grinning so wide his face could barely contain it. "You came," he shouted. "I came." "Dad, she came." Daniel appeared behind Caleb, drying his hands on a dish towel. He was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt. His hair was slightly messy. He looked different outside of the restaurant, more real, more grounded, like a man standing exactly where he was supposed to be. "Come in," he said. Victoria stepped inside. The apartment was small. Daniel hadn't exaggerated. But it was clean, and it was warm, and every surface had evidence of a life being lived with intention. Books on the shelf. Children's books mixed with electrical manuals. A school calendar on the wall with Caleb's activities marked in different colors. Photos on the refrigerator held up by magnets from places they had probably never visited. Paris, Tokyo, Rome, the kind of magnets that come free with magazine subscriptions and become a child's first atlas. And on the refrigerator door, wrapped in tinfoil, with Victoria, written in green marker, was her pancake. "There it is," Caleb said proudly. "I protected it all morning. Dad tried to eat it." "I did not try to eat it," Daniel said. "He looked at it. That counts." Victoria took the tinfoil package. She unwrapped it carefully. Inside was the flattest, most misshapen pancake she had ever seen. It had a vaguely circular shape, the way a cloud has a vaguely circular shape if you squinted and used your imagination. "It's perfect," Victoria said. "It's terrible," Daniel said. "But he made it himself." "I used extra vanilla," Caleb said. "Mom's recipe." The room went still for just a second. Daniel's expression shifted, that familiar flicker grief moving beneath the surface like a current. "Sarah's recipe," Daniel said quietly. "She always put too much vanilla in everything. Pancakes, cookies, French toast. I used to tell her she was going to turn Caleb into a vanilla bean." "And she said?" Victoria asked. Daniel smiled. "There are worse things to turn into." Victoria looked down at the pancake. This ugly, perfect, too much vanilla pancake made from a dead woman's recipe by a boy who wrote her name wrong on tinfoil. "Can I eat it here?" she asked. Caleb's face lit up. "Yes, sit down. I'll get you a plate." He scrambled to the kitchen. Daniel watched him go, then turned to Victoria. "You didn't have to come," he said. "I know." "So why did you—" Victoria held the pancake in both hands like it was something precious. "Because no one has saved me anything in a very long time." Daniel studied her. She could feel him reading her the way she read balance sheets, looking for what the numbers didn't say. "Sit," he said. "I just made coffee. It's not fancy." "I don't need fancy." They sat at the kitchen table, a small wooden table with 3 chairs. One of the chairs had a cushion taped to the seat where the padding had worn through. Caleb brought Victoria a plate, a fork, and a glass of orange juice without being asked. "Service here is excellent," Victoria said. 5 stars, Caleb said, puffing out his chest. "Tip is optional but encouraged." Victoria ate the pancake. It was objectively terrible. Too flat, too dense, and yes, way too much vanilla. But she ate every bite, and when she was done, she told Caleb it was the best thing she had tasted in years. She wasn't lying. "Victoria." Daniel said, both hands wrapped around his coffee mug. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Last night at the restaurant, you were about to tell me something, right before midnight. You started to say something and then you stopped." Victoria set her fork down. She looked at Caleb, who was on the floor now, playing with a toy truck, making engine sounds with his mouth. "Caleb," Daniel said, "why don't you go play in your room for a bit? Victoria and I need to talk." "About what?" "Grown-up stuff." "Is it boring?" "Probably." Okay. Caleb grabbed his truck and headed down the hall. He stopped at his bedroom door and turned. Victoria. Yes. You're coming back, right? Victoria felt something crack open in her chest for the 100th time since New Year's Eve. Yes, Caleb, I'm coming back. He grinned and disappeared into his room. The door closed. Daniel looked at Victoria. Waited. Victoria took a breath. She had closed billion-dollar deals without flinching. She had fired people who begged her not to. She had stood in rooms full of powerful men who wanted her to fail and stared them down until they blinked. But this sitting in a small kitchen in Brooklyn about to tell the truth to a man who gave away his dinner table, this was the hardest thing she had done. My name is Victoria Langford, she said. Daniel frowned slightly. I know, you told me. I told you my first name. I didn't tell you the rest. What rest? Daniel. I don't work in finance. I mean, I do, but that's like saying the ocean is water. It's technically true, but it doesn't capture the scope. Daniel set his coffee down. Okay. I'm the CEO of Langford Capital. It's an investment firm. I founded it when I was 19. As of last quarter, the firm manages just over $47 billion in assets. Daniel didn't move. His expression didn't change. He sat perfectly still, the way people sit when they're processing something that doesn't fit into any category they have available. I'm worth $4.7 billion personally, Victoria continued. I've been on the cover of Forbes twice. I was the youngest self-made female billionaire in American history until someone beat my record last year. Silence. The restaurant we were at last night, La Maison d'Or, is owned by a hospitality group called Crane. My company is in the final stages of acquiring that group. The entire group. All 14 properties. For $612 million. Daniel still didn't move. The reason Gerald changed his behavior last night, the reason he suddenly brought champagne and couldn't stop apologizing, he found out who I was. His boss called him. Because his boss knows that I could either make him very rich or completely destroy him. And last night, his general manager turned me away at the door. Victoria stopped. She had laid every card on the table. The apartment was quiet except for the muffled sound of Caleb making truck noises behind his bedroom door and the refrigerator humming its dying cat hum. Daniel picked up his coffee, took a sip, set it down. Say something, Victoria said. I'm thinking. About what? About why you didn't tell me last night. Because I didn't want you to look at me differently. And how did you think I'd look at you? The way everyone looks at me. Like I'm an opportunity, or a threat. Like I'm a number instead of a person. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, that gesture she was learning, the one he used when he was working through something heavy. Victoria, he said, I gave you my table because you were standing alone, and nobody would help you. Not because of what you're worth. I didn't know what you were worth. I still don't care what you're worth. You should care. It changes things. It only changes things if we let it. That's naive. Maybe, but naive got you a seat at the table last night, so maybe naive isn't as useless as you think. Victoria almost smiled. You're not angry. I'm not angry. I'm surprised. There's a difference. Most people would be angry. I'm not most people. You figured that out last night. Victoria pressed her palms flat on the table, the same way she did at her desk when she needed to ground herself. I also need to tell you something else. There's more. The acquisition, the Crane deal. I'm not just reviewing it, I'm reconsidering it. Because of what happened last night. Because of Gerald. Because of the way they treated me. And because I've since learned it wasn't the first time they treated someone that way. Daniel nodded slowly. Okay. And one of my board members, a man named Thomas Harrison, is flying to New York right now to try to stop me. He thinks I'm being emotional. He thinks a 25-year-old woman shouldn't be making decisions about a $600 million deal based on one bad experience at a restaurant. Is that what you're doing? Making a decision based on one bad experience? No, I'm making a decision based on a pattern of behavior that my due diligence missed, because we were looking at spreadsheets instead of people. Then Harrison is wrong. Harrison is powerful. He has allies on the board. If he pushes hard enough, he could call a vote of no confidence. Daniel leaned forward. A vote of what? It means they could remove me as CEO. Daniel stared at her. For doing the right thing. For doing the right thing at the wrong time in the wrong way for the wrong reasons at least. That's how they'll frame it. That's insane. That's business. Daniel sat back. He looked at his coffee at the table at the kitchen around him. This small, honest space, where the biggest decision on most days was whether Caleb got one slice of chocolate cake or two. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "I don't know yet. I have to meet Harrison at 4. "And what happens at 4? "He'll try to convince me to close the deal as planned. He'll tell me I'm being reckless. He'll remind me that the board's job is to protect shareholders, and my job is to generate returns, and feelings don't belong in a boardroom." "Do you believe that?" "I used to." "What changed?" Victoria looked at him. "You know what changed." Daniel held her gaze. "Victoria, I'm an electrician. I wire buildings for a living. I don't know anything about boards or acquisitions or $600 million. I can't tell you what to do." "I'm not asking you to tell me what to do. I'm asking you what you think." "I think," Daniel said carefully, "that you're the kind of person who already knows what's right. You've known since last night. You just need someone to tell you it's okay to do it." "Is it okay?" "It was okay the moment you turned your phone off and sat down with us." Victoria felt her eyes sting. She blinked it away. She had not cried in front of another person since she was 17 years old, and she wasn't about to start now. But she was close, closer than she had been in years. "There's one more thing," she said. "How many more things can there be?" "The waitress, Maria, the young woman who watched Caleb at the window last night. I remember her. She filed a complaint against Gerald 6 months ago. He reprimanded her for being too kind to a family he thought wasn't high class enough. She reported it. They buried it." Daniel's expression darkened. "They buried it." HR dismissed the complaint. Gerald denied everything. Maria had no recourse. She was just doing her job. She was being decent. "I know. And she was punished for it." Daniel pushed back from the table. He stood and walked to the window. Victoria watched him, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands gripped the sill. "That's what Sarah was afraid of," he said quietly. "What do you mean?" "When she made Caleb promise to be kind, when she made that the rule, she wasn't just teaching him to be good. She was warning him. Because she knew. She knew the world punishes people like Maria. People who help because it's right, not because it's rewarded." He turned to face Victoria. "And she wanted Caleb to do it anyway, even knowing the cost." Victoria stood. She walked to where Daniel was standing. They were close now, not intimately close, but close enough that she could see the weight he carried, the years of grief and labor and love, pressed into the lines around his eyes. "I'm going to fix this," she said. "How?" "Maria's complaint is being reopened. I made sure of it this morning. And when the review of the Crane Group is finished, every manager who turned someone away because of how they looked is going to answer for it." "And Gerald?" "Gerald told me the truth last night. That counts for something. But truth without change is just confession. He has to do better." Daniel nodded. "And Harrison, your board?" Victoria straightened. "Harrison can fly to New York. He can sit in my conference room. He can lecture me about shareholder value until his face turns blue. But I own 38% of Langford Capital. I built it. My name is on the building. And I will not put my name on a company that treats people the way I was treated last night." Daniel looked at her for a long time. Then he said something she didn't expect. "Can I come with you?" Victoria blinked. "To the meeting." "To the meeting. To whatever it is. I don't know what I can do, but I'd like to be there." Daniel, this is a board-level corporate meeting. It's going to be hostile. I've been in hostile rooms before. Try telling a union foreman his wiring plan is wrong. Victoria almost laughed. This is different. Is it people with power don't like being told they're wrong? That's the same everywhere. Victoria looked at this man, this electrician from Brooklyn, standing in his small apartment with flour still on his sleeve from his son's terrible pancakes, and she realized he was offering her the same thing he had offered last night at the restaurant. A seat at the table. Not because he could solve anything, not because he had power or leverage or a strategic advantage, but because he believed that showing up matters. That standing next to someone when it's hard is worth more than standing behind them when it's easy. Okay, Victoria said. Okay. You can come. Should I wear a tie? Wear whatever you want. Daniel looked down at his flannel shirt. This is my best shirt. Then it's perfect. Caleb's bedroom door burst open. I heard everything. Daniel spun around. You were supposed to be playing? I was playing and listening. I'm very talented. Caleb ran to Victoria. Are you going to fight the bad guys? Victoria knelt down so she was eye level with him. Something like that. Is my dad going with you? He is. Good. He's really brave. He doesn't think he is, but he is. Victoria looked up at Daniel. He was rubbing the back of his neck again, but this time his eyes were glistening. I know he is, Victoria said. Can I come too? Caleb asked. Not this time, buddy, Daniel said. But I'm brave too. I know you are, but someone has to guard the apartment. Caleb considered this. Fine, but you have to tell me everything when you get home. Everything. Deal. Victoria stood. She checked her phone. 2:14 p.m. Harrison's flight landed at 3. The meeting was at 4. I need to go back to my office first, she said. Meet me at Langford Capital at 3:45, 42nd floor. Tell the security desk your name. I'll have you cleared. Daniel nodded. Then he paused. Victoria? Yes. When we walk into that room, whoever this Harrison guy is, whatever he says, I want you to know something. What? You're not alone in this. I know we just met. I know this is strange. I know none of this makes sense. But you're not alone. Victoria stood in the doorway of a 2-bedroom apartment in Bay Ridge with a dead woman's pancake recipe in her stomach and a boy's misspelled name tag on the refrigerator behind her, and she heard the words she had needed to hear for 6 years. You're not alone. She didn't trust her voice, so she just nodded. Then she turned and walked down 3 flights of stairs through a front door and into the back of a town car that cost more than Daniel's rent. Back to the office, she told her driver. She pulled out her phone. One new message from Rebecca. Harrison landed early. He's already at the office. He brought 2 other board members with him. It's not just a conversation anymore, Victoria. It's an ambush. Victoria read the message twice. She put the phone down. She looked out the window as Brooklyn gave way to Manhattan, as small buildings became tall ones, as the world she had glimpsed for the last 12 hours began to recede behind glass and steel. She opened her bag and pulled out the folded legal pad page from that morning. She unfolded it and read what she had written. What would Sarah do? Victoria folded the paper and put it back in her pocket. Then she called Rebecca. I'm on my way. Clear the main conference room. I want Harrison and whoever he brought waiting for me when I arrive. Victoria, you should know he brought Mitchell Chen and Barbara Wexler. That's 3 board votes against you if this goes sideways. I know the math, Rebecca. What's the plan? Victoria looked at the Manhattan skyline rising ahead of her. Every building in that skyline represented someone's empire, someone's ambition, someone's lifetime of work. She had built her piece of that skyline by being smarter, faster, harder than anyone who tried to stop her. But today, she wasn't going to be harder. Today, she was going to be something they had never seen from her. The plan, Victoria said, is the truth. She hung up. The car crossed the bridge. Manhattan swallowed her whole. And somewhere in Brooklyn, Daniel Brooks put on his best flannel shirt, kissed his son goodbye, and walked out the door toward a fight he didn't fully understand, but refused to let someone face alone. Victoria arrived at Langford Capital at 3:22 p.m. She walked through the lobby without stopping past the security desk, past the reception area where two assistants stood when they saw her coming past the glass walls of conference rooms where deals worth hundreds of millions had been born and buried. Rebecca met her at the elevator. They're in the main conference room. Harrison is pacing. Chen is on his phone. Wexler is sitting at the head of the table. The head of the table is my seat. I know. That's why I'm telling you. Victoria stepped into the elevator. When Daniel Brooks arrives, bring him straight up. No delays, no waiting. Straight to the conference room. Rebecca hesitated. You're bringing him into the meeting? Yes. Victoria, Harrison is going to... I know what Harrison is going to do. Bring Daniel up. The elevator doors opened on the 42nd floor. Victoria walked down the corridor. She could see them through the glass. Thomas Harrison, 63, silver-haired, standing by the window, with his hands clasped behind his back, radiating the particular confidence of a man who had never been told no by anyone he considered his equal. Mitchell Chen, 51, sitting to the left, scrolling through his phone, with the calculated disinterest of someone who had already decided how he was going to vote. And Barbara Wexler, 58, sitting at the head of the table, Victoria's seat, with a leather portfolio open in front of her, pen in hand ready. 3 board members, 3 votes. Enough to force a formal review of Victoria's leadership if they moved in unison. Victoria pushed the door open. Harrison turned. Victoria. Thomas, you're in my building on a holiday. This must be serious. It is serious. Sit down. I'll stand. Barbara, you're in my chair. Wexler looked up. She didn't move. We thought a neutral seating arrangement might be appropriate given the circumstances. There's nothing neutral about sitting in someone else's seat. Move. Wexler held Victoria's gaze for 3 seconds. Then she gathered her portfolio and shifted one chair to the left. Victoria sat down at the head of the table. She didn't take off her coat. She didn't open a laptop. She just sat. Talk, she said. Harrison took the lead as she knew he would. We've spoken with Marcus. We know you've ordered a full review of the Crane acquisition. We know you've delayed the closing timeline. And we know you've been in direct contact with Philip Crane, making demands that were not authorized by this board. I don't need board authorization to conduct due diligence on a deal I'm signing. The due diligence was completed 2 months ago. The board voted unanimously to proceed. The due diligence was incomplete. Chen looked up from his phone. Incomplete how? Victoria opened the folder Rebecca had prepared that morning. She slid it across the table. 14 formal complaints of discriminatory treatment across Crane properties in the last 3 years. 7 from La Maison d'Or alone. 2 involving racial discrimination. 1 involving a staff member who was reprimanded for treating guests with kindness because those guests didn't meet management's standard of wealth. Harrison didn't look at the folder. Complaints are filed against every restaurant group in the country. That's not a reason to halt a $600 million acquisition. It is when those complaints reveal a pattern. And it is when that pattern represents a liability we'll inherit the moment we sign. Wexler picked up the folder. She read silently. Her expression didn't change, but Victoria noticed her fingers tighten on the pages. This is about last night, Harrison said. Let's not pretend otherwise. You went to one of Crane's restaurants, you were treated poorly, and now you're letting a personal slight derail a deal that will generate significant returns for our shareholders. This is not about last night. Then what is it about? It's about who we are. What we attach our name to, what we're willing to tolerate in exchange for a margin. Harrison shook his head. Victoria, I've been on this board since before you could legally drink. I've watched you build something extraordinary. But this is not leadership. This is reaction. This is emotion masquerading as principle. Victoria didn't flinch. You've known me for 3 years, Thomas. In those 3 years, have I ever made a decision based on emotion? Harrison paused. Have I? No, he admitted. Then consider the possibility that I'm not starting now. The conference room door opened. Rebecca stepped in. Ms. Langford, Daniel Brooks is here. Harrison frowned. Who? Send him in, Victoria said. Daniel walked into the conference room. He was wearing his flannel shirt. His shoes were clean but worn. His hands were in his pockets, and he carried himself the way he always did, steady, unhurried, like a man who had nothing to prove to anyone in any room. Harrison looked at him the way Gerald had looked at Victoria the night before. Who is this? Harrison asked. This is Daniel Brooks, Victoria said. He's the reason we're having this conversation. Chen leaned back. I'm sorry, is this the man from the restaurant, the one Philip mentioned? Yes. Harrison's face tightened. Victoria, this is a board-level meeting. You can't bring a civilian into... I can bring whoever I want into my conference room, Thomas. Sit down, Daniel. Daniel sat. He didn't fidget. He didn't look intimidated. He looked at Harrison the way he might look at a circuit breaker that wasn't wired right, with patience and the quiet certainty that the problem could be fixed if someone was willing to do the work. Mr. Brooks, Harrison said, with all due respect, you don't belong in this room. Daniel tilted his head. I've been hearing that a lot lately. Funny how the people who say it are always wrong. Harrison's jaw clenched. Wexler looked up from the folder. Something shifted in her expression, not quite a smile, but close. Daniel, Victoria said, tell them what happened last night, in your words. Daniel looked at the 3 board members. He took a breath. My son and I went to a restaurant for New Year's Eve. It was our one big night out. I'd been saving for it. When we got there, there was a woman at the front who'd been turned away. The manager looked at her and decided she wasn't worth his time. No reservation mix-up, no capacity issue. He just didn't think she looked like she belonged. And you offered her your table, Harrison said flatly. I offered her our table, my son and I, because that's what you do when someone's being treated like they don't matter. That's very noble, but I fail to see how... I'm not finished. Harrison blinked. People didn't interrupt Thomas Harrison. Daniel continued. The woman was Victoria. I didn't know that. I didn't know she was rich. I didn't know she ran a company. I didn't know any of it. I just saw someone being turned away on New Year's Eve, and my 8-year-old son said nobody should eat alone. So we asked her to sit with us. He paused. She sat with us for 3 hours. We talked. My son drew her a picture. She ate chocolate cake. And not once, not a single time, did she act like she was better than us. Not once did she look at my second-hand suit or my son's clip-on tie and decide we weren't worth her time. Daniel looked directly at Harrison. But the people who run that restaurant, they did exactly that, not just to Victoria, to other people, for years. And they got away with it because nobody with power cared enough to stop it. Harrison said nothing. I don't know anything about your business, Daniel said. I wire buildings. I fix things that are broken. But I know what broken looks like. And what happened at that restaurant isn't a one-night problem. It's a system that rewards people for treating other people like they're less than. And if you buy that system without fixing it, then you own it. All of it. The room was silent. Wexler closed the folder. He's right. Harrison turned. Barbara. He's right, Thomas. I read the complaints. This isn't one incident. It's a culture. And if we acquire Crane without addressing it, we're not just buying restaurants. We're buying lawsuits. We're buying PR disasters. We're buying everything that Victoria is trying to prevent. Chen set his phone down for the first time. The optics alone would be a nightmare if any of these complaints became public after we closed. This isn't about optics, Victoria said. This is about what's right. It can be both, Wexler said. Harrison looked around the room. He was losing. Victoria could see him calculating the way powerful men calculate when the ground shifts beneath them, not whether they're wrong, but whether admitting it costs less than fighting. "What exactly are you proposing?" Harrison asked. Victoria leaned forward. "I'm proposing we proceed with the acquisition, but with conditions. Full leadership review of every Crane property. Independent audit of all discrimination complaints. Mandatory retraining for every manager, and a new position. A director of service culture, someone whose entire job is to make sure that what happened to me and to every other person who was turned away from those doors never happens again." "And who would fill this position?" Harrison asked. Victoria looked at Daniel. Harrison followed her gaze. His eyebrows rose. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. He's an electrician. He's a man who gave away his only dinner reservation to a stranger because it was the right thing to do. He's a man who taught his son that kindness is a rule, not a suggestion. He understands something that nobody in this room, including me, understood until last night." "And what's that?" "That the way you treat people when you don't know who they are is the only measure that matters." Harrison looked at Daniel. Daniel looked back. Neither blinked. "Mr. Brooks," Harrison said slowly, "do you have any experience in corporate leadership?" "No." "Any formal business training?" "No." "Any reason I should believe you're qualified for a position that doesn't even exist yet?" Daniel thought about it. "My wife was a third-grade teacher. Before she died, she told our son one thing: if you can help, you help. No excuses. I've lived by that rule every day since. I've taught it to my boy, and last night that rule put me in the path of someone who needed to be reminded that people are more than what they look like or what they're worth." He paused. "I don't have a degree in corporate anything, but I know how to see people. And I know how to do what's right even when it's hard. If that's not enough for you, then I understand. But I won't pretend to be something I'm not to get a job." Wexler turned to Harrison. "I vote yes." Chen looked at Victoria, then at Daniel, then at Wexler. "I vote yes." Harrison stood alone. 3 against 1. He knew the math better than anyone. "This is unprecedented," he said. "Most good things are," Victoria replied. Harrison stared at her for a long time. Then he exhaled a slow, controlled breath, the sound of a man choosing to bend rather than break. "Fine, I vote yes, but I want quarterly reviews. I want metrics. And if this doesn't work—" "It will work," Victoria said. "How do you know?" "Because I'm going to make sure it does." Harrison gathered his things without another word. Chen followed. Wexler paused at the door and looked back at Daniel. "Mr. Brooks." "Yes, ma'am?" "Your wife sounds like she was a remarkable woman." Daniel swallowed. "She was." "Then I think you'll do just fine." Wexler left. The door closed. Victoria and Daniel sat alone in the conference room. The Manhattan skyline burned orange through the windows as the sun began its descent. "Did that just happen?" Daniel said. "It just happened. I have a job. You have a job." Daniel shook his head slowly. "I came here to support you. I didn't come here to—" "To what?" "To be recognized for who you are. To be valued for what you believe." Victoria leaned forward. "Daniel, I've hired people from Harvard, from Wharton, from every elite institution in the country, and not one of them, not a single one, would have given away their table on New Year's Eve. That doesn't make me qualified." "It makes you necessary." Daniel looked at his hands, rough hands, calloused hands, hands that had wired 1,000 buildings and held a dying wife and buttoned a small boy's coat on cold mornings. "Sarah would have laughed," he said. "At what?" "At all of this. At me sitting in a boardroom in my flannel shirt, arguing with a man in a $3,000 suit. She would have laughed until she cried. I think she would have been proud." Daniel's eyes glistened. He pressed his lips together and nodded. Victoria stood. "Come on. We have work to do." "Now." Tomorrow. Today you have a son waiting for a full report. You promised him everything. Daniel laughed. He's going to ask me 100 questions. Then give him 100 answers. They walked to the elevator together. Rebecca was waiting in the hallway, trying very hard to look like she hadn't been listening through the glass. Rebecca, Victoria said. Set up a meeting with Philip Crane for tomorrow morning. Tell him the acquisition is moving forward with conditions. And tell him I want Maria Gonzalez promoted to floor supervisor at La Maison d'Or. Effective immediately. Rebecca's eyes widened. The waitress. The woman who watched a stranger's child on New Year's Eve without being asked. The woman who filed a complaint against her boss because she believed people deserved to be treated with dignity. The woman whose complaint was ignored by everyone in a position to act. Victoria paused. That woman. Promote her. Yes, ma'am. The elevator arrived. Daniel stepped in. Victoria followed. Victoria, Daniel said as the doors closed. Yes. I don't know how to be a director of anything. You'll learn. What if I fail? Then you'll fail trying to make things better. There are worse ways to fail. Sarah used to say something like that. Sarah was right about most things. The elevator descended. 42 floors of glass and steel and ambition, all of it built by a woman who was learning floor by floor that the most important things she would ever build couldn't be measured in dollars. Daniel went home to Brooklyn that night. He climbed 3 flights of stairs and opened the door to find Caleb sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, surrounded by crayons and napkins, drawing stick figures. Dad, what happened? Tell me everything. Daniel hung up his coat. He sat down on the floor next to his son. He looked at the drawings, stick figures at a table, a sun, some stars. A woman with long hair standing next to a man and a boy. I got a new job, Daniel said. Caleb's eyes went wide. You did? Victoria gave it to me. What kind of job? The kind where I make sure people are treated right. Caleb grinned. Like Mom's rule. Daniel pulled his son close. Exactly like Mom's rule. Does this mean we're rich? Daniel laughed. No, buddy, we're not rich. Are we going to be okay? We're going to be better than okay. Caleb leaned into his father's chest. Dad? Yeah, I think Mom sent Victoria to us. Daniel closed his eyes. He held his son tighter. Yeah, buddy, I think she did too. Months passed. Victoria restructured the Crane acquisition from the inside out. Managers were retrained. Policies were rewritten. Gerald kept his job, but lost his podium. He was moved to a mentorship role working directly with new hires, teaching them the lesson he had learned the hard way on New Year's Eve. Maria Gonzalez became the youngest floor supervisor in the company's history, and within 6 months, La Maison d'Or had the highest customer satisfaction scores in the entire group. Daniel stepped into his role with the same steady, unhurried certainty he brought to everything. He didn't try to be corporate. He didn't try to speak the language of boardrooms. He spoke the language of people of dignity, of fairness, of showing up. And slowly, reluctantly, even Thomas Harrison admitted that the electrician from Brooklyn was changing the culture of Langford Capital in ways no MBA ever had. Victoria spent time with Daniel and Caleb. Not scheduled time, not strategic time, real time. Sundays in their apartment, walks through the park, helping Caleb with homework, teaching him chess while Daniel cooked dinner badly, always badly, but with enough love to make it taste better than it was. She called her parents on a Tuesday in March. Her mother answered on the first ring, as if she had been waiting by the phone for 6 years. Victoria didn't apologize. She didn't explain. She just said, "I'd like to come home for dinner." Her mother cried. Her father took the phone and said, "We'll set a place." On the next New Year's Eve, Victoria walked into La Maison d'Or. She wore a simple black coat. No jewelry, no entourage. Daniel was beside her in his flannel shirt. Caleb was between them wearing a real tie, not a clip-on that Victoria had given him for Christmas. Maria greeted them at the door. "Your table is ready, Ms. Langford." "Thank you, Maria." They sat at table 14. the same table, the same candle. But everything else had changed. Gerald stopped by their table. He shook Daniel's hand. He knelt down and told Caleb he liked his tie. Then he looked at Victoria and said simply, "Thank you for giving me a chance to be better." Victoria nodded. "Thank you for taking it." When midnight came, the room counted down together. Fireworks filled the sky. Champagne flowed. Victoria raised her glass. Not to profits, not to acquisitions, not to the empire she had built or the power she wielded or the number on her balance sheet. She raised it to Daniel and Caleb. "To the people who offer a seat before they know who's watching," she said. Daniel clinked his glass against hers. "To the people who sit down." Caleb clinked his apple juice against both of theirs and shouted, "To chocolate cake." The whole restaurant laughed. Victoria laughed loudest of all. And somewhere in a place beyond counting and measure, Sarah Brooks smiled because the rule she had whispered to her son on her last good day had traveled further than she ever dreamed. Through a boy's small hand tugging a stranger's sleeve. Through a table offered without condition. Through a woman who had everything except the one thing that mattered and found it on the night the whole world said she didn't belong. Power can buy access, but kindness earns legacy. And the truest wealth any person will ever hold is a seat at the table offered freely without knowing who is watching and without caring. End of story.